Hey, how you all doing? I wanted to make this video to talk about the application of mindfulness, awareness, and meditation, and how it applies. It can help heal anxiety and depression or any other challenging experiences a person has, any patterns of behaviors, anything you might be struggling with, any kind of resistance um, in your daily life that causes stress or strain. Being able to directly apply these tools and practices so that you have more space and breathing room to deal with the challenges that life throws your way, or to deal with the challenges that might be going on even in your own psychology. Being able to separate ourselves from it and to disidentify from it helps us to approach it in a way that we become an observer of these patterns, of these feelings and thoughts, and no longer a participant. And when we are no longer a participant, when we are no longer identified, we won't experience psychological suffering from this phenomena, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, it's not that the feelings that anxiety and depression can produce in a person immediately go away. It's not that the thoughts that race across your mind with anxiety or any kind of difficult thoughts that happen with depression or any other challenging times of high stress or what have you, none of this immediately just disappears. It's still left the way it is, but the difference is our relationship with it. When you are able to take yourself out of it and you are no longer identified and merged with it, then it just becomes this repeating cycle of thought and feeling, of patterns, of impulse, of noticing and recognition of behaviors, reactions, and any other ways that conditioning can produce these kind of experiences. The more that we become in touch with awareness and find ourselves to rest as awareness, the more space, peace, grounding, and equilibrium we have, while simultaneously these other things are happening in our total experience. In our total experience in the here and now, in this present moment, you have the present moment as it is, and the experience of just being, and this presence. Along with that, we have that smaller part of this total experience, which is the thoughts that are crossing our mind, the feelings that are running through our mind and body, the physical sensations that we have, our five senses, our environment around us, our internal state and the external state of the world around us, and our relationships with people around us. When I had really severe anxiety and the offset of depression from going through that, when I had my obsessive compulsive issues that was derived also from like an anxiety, as well as a little bit of post-traumatic stress. At my worst points, I could barely function in a regular way going through my day-to-day experience, because sometimes I'd go by hour or minute of just managing and dealing with these overwhelming sensations and feelings and thoughts that were happening in my body because of my hypersensitized nervous system from the anxiety. My level of panic being an 8 out of 10 for 3, 4, 5 hours straight, with intermittent waves of panic that sometimes goes to a 10 and then calms back down. And it's like this constant state, this hypersensitized nervous system where your mind all day long is having these racing thoughts. You have all the physical sensations that the anxiety is producing with 1,000 different symptoms, and you have all the feelings of dread, impending doom, of the fear, the panic, the dread, all of that is produced. The the depression, the sadness, the grief, the sorrow. That is also part of that experience. The thing is with these experiences is that when you have that high running adrenaline, it's going to produce all of these sensations, and the intense negative emotions produce all these racing thoughts and the kind of psychological side of it as well, you know. And so you're there and you're stuck with it and you're living with it, you know, day after day, week by week, and you have your good days and your bad days and your good weeks and your bad weeks, and then you feel like you're making a lot of progress, and then you have a massive feeling of a setback and you feel like you're back to square one, but you're never really fully back to square one, because every step of recovery is this 2 steps forward, 1 step backward process. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. Because the other thing about mindfulness, awareness, meditation, and one of the other biggest tools of recovery from these different states of being is acceptance. Having 100% radical acceptance of everything as it is here and now. Because when you're getting over this anxiety or depression and everything going on with it, and believe me, I had it the worst you could have with the anxiety and everything that it entails, the really harsh depression that came with that and that experience. Totally. One of the things as human beings that we do is that we seek pleasure and avoid pain, and the way that we manage these type of conditions is that we want to either push it away as far as possible to make it go away, or we want to cling to feeling a certain psychological or emotional state that we can hold on to, so we don't experience the negative stuff. But as it were, for a human body and mind, naturally, there is this flow of everything as it is, coming and going. And so when ego comes in the way, when our sense of self that says things shouldn't be this way, or it should be like this, or any kind of resistance to what is going on in your present experience, that is what causes the extra friction and resistance that makes states of anxiety or depression become much more ingrained and difficult to overcome, and a stronger intensity to all of it, because we're adding more layers to it. And one of the biggest things I struggled with in the beginning of dealing with anxiety, before I started to adopt 100% acceptance of everything as it were with my condition going on, was that I had a fear of fear cycle. As long as I was afraid of experiencing all these emotions and sensations and doing things in my behaviors and in my daily routine to avoid feeling a certain way or to avoid getting triggered in a certain way. So I've mentioned in the past, and I'll mention it again, that the best resource I've ever had for dealing with anxiety and depression, depersonalization, those 3 things that come with a really intense anxiety disorder, if you're going through depression as well. At Last a Life by Paul David was the single best resource I've ever read, and had all the tools and practices that I've needed to overcome my anxiety, my depression, and my depersonalization. So anybody watching this video that's going through those kind of experiences, I would highly, highly suggest checking out that book. And I promise you, if you practice all the tools and everything mentioned in that book, that it would be the single best resource that you would use in recovery. And so the biggest thing that we can do is with our relationship, with our different thoughts, our different feelings, our different patterns, our conditioning, right? And also where we are finding ourselves, and where is perception coming from. So with relationship and awareness of these different experiences, there is the practice of meditation and mindfulness that comes into it. It's very simple. When you have these thoughts, when you have these feelings, you just observe and watch. As an observer of these feelings, of these thoughts, and if you notice that every feeling that is produced for somebody, the underlying source is through that thought that comes in the mind, that is linked to that feeling. So that is linked to that feeling. So in a sense, you have the thought that starts here, and the feeling that travels all the way into the body, and then you have the nervous system and everything else, and the physiological symptoms and sensations that are produced from the feeling that also happens, that accompanies the thought. So in awareness and in mindfulness, we're simply allowing everything to be exactly how it is without trying to change or fix anything. With awareness and our own experience, how are we able to sit with everything as it is? Is this acceptance? And you don't have to try to accept, because the fact that it's already happening means it's automatically already accepted through awareness, because it's happening. The next thing with it is relationship. How are we having a relationship with these experiences, with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our patterns of behaviors and our impulses? When you have these experiences with everything that's going on for yourself, whatever your current state of being is, the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, and everything else, we are going to hold it close, bring it closer. We're going to say, it's okay. This is okay, this is allowed. Using love and tenderness, this compassion, this being kind to ourselves, these, negative emotions, we show ourselves kindness. And you have this attitude of radical acceptance of it's okay, this experience and everything as it is. And when you do that, there is no longer any fight, that everything is just flowing together. And it's trying to reach this place of groundedness and harmony. And so that's what you're doing. You're harmonizing your entire being. Acceptance means that it's not accepting for a certain amount of time until you can't accept it anymore. The recovery process looks like it doesn't matter if I'm having a really anxious day or a really light and easy day, because that allowance and acceptance is there no matter what. Because whatever is there for you is always going to be fully allowed and okay. So you've got allowance and acceptance. You've got resting as awareness, letting everything be exactly how it is, not putting timelines on recovery, not adding stress to stress, not adding fear to fear. Last Life by Paul David, he mentions that when you have a broken arm or leg, you allow it to rest and to heal itself by not taking a hammer and constantly banging on the cast and making your injury worse. Well, the same thing applies when you're dealing with these mental things. Anxiety recovery is like having that cast on your arm and leg and allowing it to heal by not trying to do anything more about it, if that makes sense. You're not trying to add anything to it. Because everything that I'm talking about and these practices and tools and principles, what have you, is just about a way of being. It's just a shift in perspective. It's a shift in awareness and allowing life to be as it is. It means everything here and now, whatever is appropriate to deal with it at the time that it is happening. Your life as a whole is important to deal with in the appropriate ways so that your mental state and your well-being is always, safe to really take care of yourself.